Luka does Luka things, but it's Reggie Bullock who is really the difference maker. We'll talk about that in the Mavs win. Plus, JJJ, Jaren Jackson Jr. comes back for the Memphis Grizzlies. What impact does he have moving forward? And real or fake, the Utah Jazz are starting to fall apart. It's all right now on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NBA podcast. Thank you for making this your first listen every day. And on Wednesdays, normally Jake Madison here, but Jake pulled away. So we're doing the East Coast West thing. We're doing Celtics Lakers. Joining me from Locked On Lakers, Andy Kamenetsky. I'm John Corral.
Green shirt.
Yeah, you're wearing a green shirt. I mean, of course you are. Because we know how it really goes.
No, it does not. No, it does not. Things are grim for the Lakers, but it ain't that grim.
How grim does it have to get? How grim would it have to get for the Lakers for you to say, all right, you know what? I'm turning
to the Celtics. I'm just giving up. I'm gonna give this whole watching NBA thing, my farewell salute, and then I'm out of here.
Never.
That ain't happening.
Not never. Yeah.
No, I could maybe, would I ever consider adopting a different team? Possibly, I guess. It ain't going to be the Celtics.
Yeah, I feel you. There's, it's kind of funny when I went to college, and because I ended up going to school I didn't get recruited for, and I was like, geez, I hope their colors are anything but purple and gold. And what were they? I had to wear purple and gold in college.
Nice.
But it just means something different. It doesn't mean the same thing as it does. So anyway, here we are. We're not talking about the Celtics. We're not talking about the Lakers in this because they did not play 5 games on the slate. Later on, the Utah Jazz, they've lost their 3rd straight. Is this the sign of them coming down to earth? We'll talk about that. In the second segment, we'll get into New Orleans, Memphis. They got a key player back in Jaren Jackson Jr. What does that mean for them? But let's start with the game of the night. Really was Dallas and the Clippers. Dallas 103-101. That included a ridiculously stupid Luka Doncic shot. Now, I have watched Luka hit just crushing shots from that left hash mark multiple times, watching him kill the Celtics. Now he did it to the Clippers. Just picks up an errant pass and just drills it. So more Luka magic, but it's Reggie Bullock who comes through in this and breaks through a real wicked slump to hit 4 of 8 from 3 and help the Mavericks get past the Clippers.
Yeah, I thought it was significant in this game. When you mentioned Reggie Bullock. In the 4th quarter, Luka did not lead the team in points. It was actually Reggie Bullock. His 4 threes all came in the 4th quarter. He had 13 points in that frame. Luka Doncic had 5, just 1 of 3 shooting. He also didn't lead the team in assists. He had 1. Your dime master was renowned passer Dwight Powell. He had 3 assists in the 4th quarter. But I think there's significance to that when, especially in a game where Dallas blew a really big lead and had to fight to ultimately pull the thing out, or I guess fight against their own worst instincts. They didn't end up getting by on the strength of their binky. You know what I mean? In Luka.
Yeah.
They weren't just ultimately relying on that guy to carry them through, even though he had a great game overall. There were other guys who were really key down the stretch. And for a team like Dallas that I think has spent the early season kind of looking to find itself, I think there's something significant in that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Luka was special again, 35 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals. And like I said, that shot gets to the line 11 times. Luka's going to be Luka. Luka's in the MVP conversation for a reason. So he's obviously going to do everything. His usage rate is through the roof. His assist rate is through the roof. It's Luka doing everything. So on these days where Dallas can win because of somebody else, it's Bullock in those 4 3-pointers. It's Spencer Dinwiddie. It's Dorian Finney-Smith finally breaking the 20-point mark. It's the bench battle where actually, I'm sorry, they lost the bench battle. But it's them getting the other guys to step up. I don't know about how this is going to go for the Mavericks. You're right. They're finding themselves. This early part of the season can be a sort of extended preseason, for lack of a better way to classify it. You've got to find these combinations of guys that work. And it also helps that Bullock is, you can kind of count on him to eventually break out of these slumps. You look at him last season, he started off super cold and eventually got himself going. He was okay early, but this early season slump is not unusual for him. So you say, okay, he's going to come around. How are we using Christian Wood? Can he figure things out? Well, how are these rotations going to work? Luka carries them, keeps them in the mix, and then a game like this could be something that springboards the other guys and kind of keeps them up at the top and brings them higher in the standings.
Yeah, I mean, they're still, I think, trying to figure out that dynamic without Jalen Brunson and, secondary playmaking, secondary scoring, just another guy who adds a dimension that doesn't feel like it's all centered around Luka. And, at the end of the day, the Mavericks are an extension of Luka Doncic, but you don't want to feel like you are kind of helpless to put your own stamp on a game if Luka isn't basically out there providing that blueprint. So it's good for him.
Yeah, you just can't burn them out. You can't burn them out now. And then because he just came off a Eurobasket run, it's just, you have to find other ways to win. Meanwhile, the Clippers lost. They're 8-7. They're still without Kawhi, and even though they're the ones who won the bench battle, that just means that Paul George and Marcus Morris were the only guys doing anything in the starting lineup. Paul George had 23 points. Morris chipped in 18 on 7-11 shooting, so they're 14 of 24 combined. Zubac, 3 points. Luke Kennard, 0. Reggie Jackson, 6. Norm Powell off the bench, 5. Terrence Mann, 2. You get 22 from Batum. You get 17 from John Wall. That's nice. That gets you that bench battle win, but you put up 101 points. That's not going to do it. And they shot well. They just couldn't get anybody else to even take shots.
Well, I mean, part of the reason you don't get enough shots or enough points is you have 21 turnovers. And those 21 turnovers turned into 28 points for Dallas. That, I mean, it was a 2-point loss.
Right.
Cut down your turnovers to something like 16, which is still pretty bad. And the Clippers end up winning this game. And then, you talked about the contributions from guys that aren't Paul George. Luke Kennard leaving the game 3 minutes in with a calf injury. We'll see where that goes. But he's such a great shooter for them and such a source of outside scoring. It just puts more of that question, or puts more, I guess, sort of onus on that question of just, when is Kawhi going to be back? Like, Paul George, I think over the last 5 or 6 games has done a really good job taking it upon himself to, step up in Kawhi's absence. He began the season saying that, in terms of the pecking order, Kawhi is the number 1. I'm the number 2. I'm cool with that. But what's funny about that is I actually think Paul George, he's not good enough to be the number 1 on a truly elite contending squad. And I don't mean that as a slight against Paul George. There's only a handful of players in the league that are really good enough to do that. Paul George is a damn good player. He's really, really good. But I think the best gets brought out of Paul George when he is forced to operate as the number 1, even if it isn't necessarily in the best interest of that team's ceiling. That being said, Paul George had 10 of the 21 turnovers for the Clippers. So
that's a ridiculous
it speaks to too much being on his plate. Again, you really need Kawhi back.
64 field goal attempts is an outrageously low number.
Again, 21 turnovers. I mean, it's a lot of empty possessions.
21 turnovers. Even with 21 turnovers, 64 field goal attempts. That's a slow, plodding pace. That is a wild number. The fact that they put up 64 attempts and the Mavs, by the way, so you force 21 turnovers and the Mavs only still get 80 field goal attempts. When you force 20 turnovers, you should be up in the 90s. This is a slow game. But there you go, 103, 101. Today's NBA.
A starting lineup for the Clippers of Marcus Morris, Ivica Zubac, Reggie Jackson, Paul George, Luke Kennard. It doesn't exactly reek of running. You know what I mean? Like that. No, that's not like the next incarnation of Showtime, just from down the hallway.
No, it's not. They like to run in Memphis. They like to run in New Orleans. Those teams are fun. We'll talk about them in just a second. First, let's talk about today's sponsor, which is Turo, which is the biggest car sharing service marketplace in the world. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget. It's across the US, UK, Canada, coming soon to Australia. You can book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. You can get a classic or luxury car for a special event, a birthday, or a holiday. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget. You need to get from point A to point B. You can test drive that new electric car that you've had your eye on and see how it fits everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars. Find your drive at Turo, Turo.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar. You are looking for something delicious, but also something healthy, something that will give you the protein that you're looking for. How about bars called Cookie Dough Topper, Coconut Brownie Bar, Coconut Brownie Topper? Let's just get all the delicious things that we can think of, put them together in a name, and Built Bar just makes them. Chocolate Peppermint Granola. It's Built's take on granola, so it's more filling and still very tasty. Candy Cane Brownie Puff. These puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. If you haven't tried these Built Bars before, they're the best tasting protein bars ever built. 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, incredibly, shockingly low sugar and calories, like 130 calories. That's nothing for what you're getting here. So go to Built.com because you've got to try this. 15% off your order right now with the promo code LOCKEDON15. That's LOCKEDON15. Use it every time you go to Built.com for 15% off. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On Sports today. It's all the games that matter from around the sports world, beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes, with the local hosts, the local experts. You're not going to get this type of podcast, this type of insight anywhere else. So wherever you found this podcast, you can find that one even on YouTube. Let's get back to these games here and go to Memphis and New Orleans. In New Orleans, CJ McCollum drops 30 points, 14 of those in the third quarter. The Pelicans get the win over Memphis, 113-102. Jaren Jackson Jr. came back in this game and looked like a guy who's missed a significant amount of time. 3 of 14 shooting, 0 of 7 from 3. It's just 7 points, a -6. But hey, it's not about this particular game. It's about getting him, Andy, back on the court and supercharging this Memphis Grizzlies team that's done well to kind of hang in there. They're 9-6 right now. They're kind of middling along at 5-5 over their last 10. But getting Triple J back, that's a big deal, especially with Desmond Bane out with the hurt toe for a few weeks. This is a nice time to get that kind of reinforcement for Memphis.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with it being obvious that Jaren Jackson Jr. is still getting his touch back, probably, feeling his comfort level back on the floor, 3 of 14 from the field, 0 of 7 from behind the arc. He still had 5 blocks. And those 5 blocks speak to what he can bring to this team defensively, what they miss when he's not there defensively. At the top of his game, Jaren Jackson Jr. is somebody that is going to be talked about in that Defensive Player of the Year conversation. all defense teams, stuff like that. And it's really important for Memphis to have him. And he's part of that young core that's creating a really fun, exciting identity for Memphis. I know we plan to talk about this in talking about this game, but just both of these teams, these small market teams that have struggled at times, really getting their city consistently engaged in their teams. Like I don't mean like that their fans are fair weather. Like I know that they both have rabid fan bases, but they've had to work to really, particularly New Orleans, to try to make it seem like this is something that's going to be sustainable long term. Both, and they're not teams that have been thought about as free agent destinations. Both of these teams right now are in a place where they could be building something for the long term that's sustainable, it's exciting, it's good for the long-term health of the franchise, and maybe could put them in a position where you never know. Some big name free agent says, screw it, I want to be in a place that's fun where I can win. And you could have a hell of a lot less fun than playing with Ja Morant or playing with Zion and Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, look, these two cities, first of all, you've got Ja, who just bleeds Memphis. That dude loves Memphis.
He's got a giraffe named after him at the Memphis Zoo, Giraffe. Yeah. I mean, like, I'll tell you, as far as keeping a guy long-term in your city, that's a heady play. Like, that's borderline dirty pool. Like, you're appealing to Jaws. How could you leave your giraffe? You can't leave your giraffe.
Really? You're going to ditch the giraffe? You cold heart. No, but he's bought fully in, and that is a fun team, and it does take after his personality. And so, yeah, look, man, you know how it goes. Veterans want to win. They want to win. And you can look at a place like Memphis and say, hey man, Memphis is a cool city and these guys are having fun. I want to win and have fun and make my money. And if we can do all of those things in one place, then let's do it. And yeah, playing next to Ja, that type of energy is infectious. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Ja is my favorite young player in the league. He's been for a couple of years now. He made a play in this game that was, I mean, I tweeted it out at Cam Brothers if people want to find it, although I'm sure you can see it somewhere on social media. CJ McCollum is inbounding the ball, and Ja has his back to him as the sequence starts. He spins around, leaps in the air, catches this inbound that, again, he began facing the opposite direction, darts towards his basket, goes behind his back to get past Larry Nance Jr., and then takes it to the rack. I mean, these are just spectacular plays by just an incredibly entertaining player. And like, you think about the grit and grind Grizzlies, they were fun in the sense that they had a lot of big personalities with Tony Allen and Zebo, like fun guys, interesting guys to root for. And they had an identity that really felt like Memphis, but they weren't necessarily the most entertaining team on the court.
No, they weren't. Right.
This Grizzlies team is really entertaining on top of having fun personalities who like to talk, who I think fit well with Memphis, but they are just spectacularly fun. And this Pelicans team is fun.
Yep. And especially when CJ McCollum is hitting his shots. He has struggled recently. His last 4 games, 9 points, 13 points, 7 points, 9 points, shooting terribly, 20, 30%. Now he finally wakes up, 11 of 23, 7 of 13 from 3. On a night where Zion is out again, he takes the lead, and you get nice contributions from Larry Nance and obviously Brandon Ingram, and everybody's favorite little guy, Jose Alvarado, which, I mean, how can you not love him? You talk about entertaining and fun. He's like he's like the most fun guy. This Pelicans team has the potential, just like Memphis. We look at the up and down the West standings, parity all over the place, and in all of these teams, the Spurs are 6-9, and you go all the way up to the Suns, who are 8 and 5. There's just these 3 games that separate all of these teams from 4 to like 13, and you get Zion back, and CJ gets going, and Brandon Ingram gets going, and this is a team that also is fun. And by the way, my favorite city outside of Boston. That's just a fun place to be. You talked about the fan bases. Yeah, rabid fan base. The problem is when they were bad, we've all gone through the bad. You're going through the bad now. The Celtics have gone
Tell me
through
about it. The Pelicans are getting our pick.
You're going through some real bad right now.
Yeah.
We all see the fan base, kind of go away a little bit. There's always a percentage drop with every team. The problem is that in a small market like that, the percentage drop is just there's a smaller pool to begin with, so it looks worse. I'm glad that Memphis is as good as they are, and when you look at the point differentials, the Pelicans have the second best point differential in the West, so they are showing that they have the potential within them to be a really, really good team this season.
Well, you know what? We talked about CJ McCollum and him having this breakout game tonight, a bit of a bounce back. There's nobody on the Pelicans who matters that's older than 31. CJ McCollum turned 31 during this season, or a little bit before the season began, which means he's not young, but he's not old either. And his game, assuming he stays healthy, that'll age well. Everybody else, whether you're talking about the stars and Brandon Ingram or Zion, or the role players, Jose Alvarado, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Larry Nance Jr. on the older side of a role player, but still, on the right side of 30, they've got time to grow together, which especially too, that core. And unfortunately, that pick coming to them most of the just kill me. We got a title, though. We got a title out of it.
You got it. Yay. You got it.
Keep telling myself we got a title out of it. Just kill me. But anyway.
I'm going to give you a moment. I'm going to give you a moment to catch your breath, because we got to talk about the Utah Jazz. All right? We'll give you a second because I have to talk about BetOnline. BetOnline just put out the new odds for MVP, and the new betting leader for MVP happens to be Jason Tatum at 3-1. So that's a new development. Jason Tatum of the Celtics on BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting info, like the MVP race. So check it out. You got stats, news, analysis, the latest odds, the trends for every professional sport, amateur leagues, all of that too. You want basketball? Obviously it's there. Football, soccer, esports, it's all at BetOnline.net. You listen to podcasts. This is a podcast. They have podcasts, so you can find those at BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head on over to the website. You can use your mobile device to get there if you'd like. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. A couple of other games here before we get to our real or fake. Portland Trailblazers 117-110 winners over the San Antonio Spurs. Sacramento Kings 153-121 over the Brooklyn Nets. Wow. If you want to hear about those games and all these games from the insiders, the Locked On experts, go to Game to Game. It's on this Locked On NBA feed. It's a great recap of all the nuts and bolts that you need to catch up on all these games. It's the Game to Game feed.
It just dawned on me. Brooklyn scored 121 in this game and lost by 32.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. And I just don't even want to talk about the Nets right now, because why? What more are you going to say? If you want to know, hey, Locked On Nets is there. Locked On Kings, 2 awesome shows.
Yeah.
Game to Game gets you all that. Let's talk about the Jazz, because the Jazz were the big story, the big surprise. They were right at the top of the NBA, and now they've lost 3 in a row. Andy, the players-only meeting in New York, they got to Utah. They put the players-only meeting together. Everything's fixed for the New York Knicks. They won this game. Jalen Brunson.
How many players only meetings have the Knicks had over the last 2 or 3 years? I feel like we're always just hearing about a players only meeting with them.
It's it's a lot. It's a lot. They've needed a lot of them. I don't know what they accomplish, but I all I know is that Julius Randle got everybody together, and they according to reports, it was a positive bonding as a group. So the Knicks are now 7-7, behind Washington, behind the just behind everybody in the East, and it's just not looking great. It's just not looking great for the New York Knicks. But we want to talk about the Jazz here because they've been such a surprise, and they still have a plus 3.5 point differential. So the point differential suggests that they're still kind of in that mix, but they've lost 3 in a row, Andy. So the question here is real or fake. We play real or fake every week on Wednesday. Real or fake. This is where the Utah Jazz fall apart.
Real. I believe we're starting to see water seeking its own level because this is a team that they're not they're not scrubs. Like they've got enough players on there that are competent, but what they don't have is enough players that can really carry a team over the course of an entire season. And one thing they've got guys that frankly are too good to be purely tanking, and if nothing else, guys like Jordan Clarkson, Kelly Olynyk, Mike Conley, I'm sure they would like to be on another team, and therefore they're going to be playing well enough to hopefully get moved into a better situation or to showcase themselves for next year because a lot of them are free agents. One thing I noticed though, going over their numbers and in figuring out real or fake, this was a game where they shot 32.6% from three, 14 of 43, not particularly good. If you look at their splits, they are incredibly dependent on hitting outside shots. In their win heading into tonight's game, so I don't have it totally updated, but in their wins before this game, they averaged 39.4% from behind the arc, third in the league, barely behind Cleveland. So basically, when they won, they were among the best teams in the league from distance. In losses, they shot 31.5%, which 29th, just ahead of a group known as the Lasers or the Lakers. And God, but you look also too at the prime 3-point shooters on this team. Lauri Markkanen, 38% in wins, 25% in losses. Not a coincidence. He's averaging 25 points per game in wins, 15 points per game in losses. Jordan Clarkson, 45% in wins, 27% in losses. Not coincidentally.
Which is what he shot in this game.
His points per game go down 5 points in wins versus losses. Mike Conley Jr., 42% in wins, 36% in losses. Colin Sexton, 41% in wins, 31% in losses. And this one is Kelly Olynyk, 58% in wins, 33% in losses.
Yeah.
So it just speaks to how important for this team 3-point shooting really is and how much it really makes or breaks them. Malik Beasley is really the only guy who's been really rock solid consistent on the road versus at home. But I think that just is a major dictator of this team's fortunes, and they're going to have a whole lot of road games. I've seen their schedule.
Mm-hmm. And let's look at that schedule because up next is the Phoenix Suns. Then after that, they're at Portland on a back-to-back. You go Phoenix, Portland on the back-to-back, then at the Clippers, at home against Detroit, at Golden State, back-to-back at Phoenix again. You're back home against Chicago. Then you face the Clippers. There's no let-up in this. This is a tough stretch for them. So I think it is also real because these are going to be tough games. They have wins over Denver. They have wins over New Orleans, Memphis. They've beaten twice. They've beaten good teams. So I'm not saying that because they're facing good teams, this is where things start to fall apart. But it's just going to start getting a little bit more relentless. And now Danny Ainge has been out there making his media tour about, hey, no, people think I want to lose. Like, no, I'm very happy about this. Look, let's dispel this once and for all. He needs people to think he's happy about this. He needs people to believe that he wants to keep this team. He sees something in this team, because when somebody comes along and says, hey, man, we like what Lauri Markkanen has been doing, what would it take? If they say, if he's out there just not even posturing, you say, we know you're selling, so here's your pick, and let's move on. Danny is not. I can tell you one thing, because I've covered Danny Ainge. I've talked to him a million times. He does not lose trades. He will not do a trade where he even thinks it's kind of even. He will only do the trades where he feels like he's the winner. So that's why he did the trades with Cleveland. That's why he did the trade with Minnesota, because those trades were such like, wow, you're really getting all of that? That's amazing. And so he's posturing. I don't believe for a second that he actually is thrilled that this team has been doing as well as it's doing. The only thing he's happy about is that these guys are playing their value up, and then he gets to come out there and be like, no, we saw something in these guys all along. You might not think it fit, but we always thought that this group could do well. No, this is fake. This is starting to fall apart. And just so happens that it's starting to fall apart around, hey, they go play New Orleans twice again. December 15th is that second game against New Orleans, right before they go on the road to face Milwaukee and Cleveland. December 15th is when the trades can start happening.
Yeah.
I love that Utah's the big feel-good story, but I just feel like at some point Danny Ainge has a plan, and this ain't part of the plan. So it's great that people have played up their value, but it's all going to start coming apart, and the pieces are going to start moving between December and February.
Yeah, I think they also benefited too, Utah, from being such a weird roster without really like a clear pecking order, that I think it took teams a while to kind of just figure out what they do.
It's true. What
you
the
know
hell?
what I mean?
You game plan for that team,
right? I like they're a strange team in that sense. Like, you know, when Lauri Markkanen is your number one, and look, to be fair to him, he's having a nice season. But when Lauri Markkanen is your number one, and then you basically have like 5 or 6 guys behind him that are fine, like they're all fine. You have to pay attention to all of them, and they can all put up low double-digit scoring. Figuring out exactly what you do with that when it's a completely different team than last year, and I'm sure a lot of these teams facing them early on just thought of them as in the Wembanyama sweepstakes already, as if, you know, Jordan Clarkson or Kelly Olynyk or Mike Conley Jr. gives a crap whether or not Utah ends up with Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson. They're not likely going to be on this team anyway. So doesn't matter to them.
Right. Well, we'll see how it goes, but we both believe that this is the beginning of the everything crumbling in Utah. So
sorry to our boss.
It was fun while it lasted. Hey, and look, it's still going to be fun, and we're not wishing harm on them. Look, if you keep winning, great. Prove us wrong. It's like Principal Skinner. And prove me wrong, kids. Prove me wrong. So we'll see how that goes. Once again, thanks to Andy Kamenetsky at Cam Brothers on Twitter for subbing in, coming off the bench. And once again, this Lakers Celtics show, I've enjoyed it immensely.
It is fun.
It's a good time. I'm John Corrales from the Locked On Celtics podcast at John_Corrales. Appreciate you all listening, watching. If you're not subscribed by now, please subscribe, watch the show on YouTube. And if you are subscribed, we'd love it if you share the podcast, tell your friends and family, everybody, that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On NBA podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.